save our gracious Queen. Long live our noble Queen. God save the Queen. Send her victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the Queen. Thy choicest gifts in store, on her be pleased to pour. Long may she reign. May she defend our laws and ever give us cause to sing with heart and voice. God save the Queen.
Welcome to the Beau Show. Today's show is all about Queen Elizabeth II, who has passed away at the age of 96. It's the end of a royal era, as Queen Elizabeth had the longest reign of any British monarch. I opened this show with the British national anthem, God Save the Queen, and I want to provide some history about it, which will be pertinent to today's show. From the royals' own website, they say the British national anthem in its present form dates back to the 18th century. The words and the tune are anonymous and may date back to the 17th century. God Save the King was a patriotic song first publicly performed in London in 1745, which came to be known as the national anthem at the beginning of the 19th century. In September 1745, the young pretender to the British throne, Prince Charles Edward Stuart, defeated the army of King George II at Prestonpans, near Edinburgh. In a fit of patriotic fervor after news of Prestonpans had reached London, the leader of the band at the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, arranged God Save the King for performance after a play. It was a tremendous success and was repeated nightly. This practice soon spread to other theaters, and the custom of greeting monarchs with the song as he or she entered a place of public entertainment was thus established. There is no authorized version of the national anthem, as the words are a matter of tradition. Additional verses have been added down through the years, but these are rarely used. The words used today are those sung in 1745, substituting Queen for King where appropriate. On official occasions, only the first verse is usually sung. The British tune has been used in other countries. European visitors to Britain in the 18th century noticed the advantage of a country possessing such a recognized musical symbol. In total, around 140 composers, including Beethoven, Haydn, and Brahms, have used the tune in their compositions. But it wasn't until the reign of Queen Victoria that it was considered a national anthem. American ears will not hear this tune as God Save the Queen, but rather My Country 'Tis of Thee, as in 1831, Samuel Francis Smith wrote the lyrics to this song titled America while a student at Andover Theological Seminary. He had been asked to create lyrics set to this melody, and when he did so, it was first publicly performed on July 4th, 1831, and went on to become one of America's anthems prior to the Star-Spangled Banner's adoption. Given America's independence from Great Britain, it can be said that My Country 'Tis of Thee is a statement of American democracy against the monarchy. I think about songs that I've changed the lyrics to in order to give the song a new meaning or a new interpretation. When a melody is etched in your mind, changing its lyrics causes a listener to hear it differently. God Save the Queen has a melody that is stirring yet simple. It is majestic, which is a word that comes from majesty or Her Majesty. It contains all the proper pomp and circumstance of a royal. It puts you at full attention. So now that I have your attention, let's segue into Her Royal Highness Elizabeth II and her reign. In the hours following the announcement of the death of the Queen, crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace to pay homage, singing the anthem to memorialize her. For many Britons, this was a sad day. She had just seen the transfer of power of Prime Minister from Boris Johnson to Liz Truss, the first female Prime Minister in quite some time. She presided over the UK for 70 years, and the only monarch most living Britons have ever known, considering the length of her reign. In 1952, when the 25-year-old Elizabeth first put on the crown, Winston Churchill was Prime Minister, Harry Truman was President, and The Today Show had just debuted. In her time, she saw 15 prime ministers, 14 U.S. presidents, and a considerable portion of American history, and provided a stabilizing force in geopolitical affairs. 80% of people in the UK were born after Elizabeth took the throne. Operation London Bridge is the name of the well-orchestrated plan to announce the Queen's passing, which began with Liz Truss alerting overseas leaders. At the moment that a footman posted notice of the Queen's death in Balmoral Castle in Scotland, the well-rehearsed media fete began, which will be 10 days of official mourning. The BBC played a rendition of God Save the Queen over a portrait of Queen Elizabeth as her death was announced. In her 70-year reign, the Queen saw leaders come and go, wartime and peace, social upheaval, and of course, scandal in her own royal family. But she remained the bedrock of the British people. She remains a symbol of affection for Britons, whereas her son Charles, who will now be King Charles III, is not nearly as popular, especially in the post-Diana era. In a statement, Charles called his mother's death, quote, "a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all members of my family," adding, "I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world," unquote. Her death comes at a tenuous time in the UK, when inflation is high, a war in Ukraine continues, an energy crisis, as well as the aftermath of Brexit, and a new prime minister. But this is history, and history doesn't stop. It unfolds in real time. Unfortunately for the Queen, her grandson, Prince Harry, decided to leave the royal pedigree after marrying American actress Meghan Markle, who upended a great deal of tradition. Harry decided to leave the United Kingdom and pursue a life with his wife in Los Angeles. He went from being famous by birth to being famous by choice, whereas his wife pursued fame from the start. This became a contentious issue, and one Queen Elizabeth surely didn't prefer to have to deal with. In addition to the revelations about Prince Andrew's connection to trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, that was also a stain on the monarchy. When you think about Elizabeth's entry into the royal sphere at age 25, Britain was coming out of the pains of the Second World War. This was not an ideal time. Britain lost a great deal of its empire. When she was 21 years old, 5 years before becoming queen, she promised the British Commonwealth this, quote, "My whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service," unquote. For 10 decades, she provided that devotion and stability. She was married 73 years to Prince Philip, who died just last year. And she met more dignitaries and officials than probably any other person in her time, or perhaps any other time in history. She was fond of horses and her beloved Welsh corgis. An irony is that Elizabeth was not destined for the crown, at least not in the traditional way. Her father's elder brother, Prince Edward, was destined to be king, and naturally followed by any children that he had. But in 1936, when she was 10, Edward VIII abdicated to marry twice-divorced American Wallis Simpson, and Elizabeth's father became King George VI. Princess Margaret recalled asking her sister whether this meant that Elizabeth would one day be queen. "Yes, I suppose it does," she replied, and never mentioned it again. You could say that Elizabeth was born for her time. As a youth, she spent time in underground shelters as 300 bombs fell adjacent to her home at Windsor Castle. as the country was at war with Germany. Our current generations, especially in America, do not know what that could possibly be like. But it makes you who you are. In 1940, when she was just 14 years old, she made her first public broadcast. Take a listen.
Her Royal Highness, Princess Elizabeth.
In wishing you all good evening, I feel that I am speaking to friends and companions who have shared with my sister and myself many a happy children's hour. Thousands of you in this country have had to leave your homes and be separated from your fathers and mothers. My sister Margaret Rose and I feel so much for you, as we know from experience what it means to be away from those we love most of all. To you living in new surroundings, we send a message of true sympathy, and at the same time we would like to thank the kind people who have welcomed you to their homes in the country. All of us children who are still at home think continually of our friends and relations who have gone overseas, who have traveled thousands of miles to find a wartime home and a kindly welcome in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and the United States of America. My sister and I feel we know quite a lot about these countries. Our father and mother have so often talked to us of their visits to different parts of the world. So it is not difficult for us to picture the sort of life you are all leading, and to think of all the new sights you must be seeing, and the adventures you must be having. But I am sure that you too are often thinking of the old country. I know you won't forget us. It is just because we are not forgetting you that I want, on behalf of all the children at home, to send you our love and best wishes, to you and to your kind hosts as well. Before I finish, I can truthfully say to you all that we children at home are full of cheerfulness and courage. We are trying to do all we can to help our gallant sailors, soldiers, and airmen. And we are trying too to bear our own share of the danger and sadness of war. We know, every one of us, that in the end all will be well, for God will care for us and give us victory and peace. And when peace comes, remember, it will be for us, the children of today, to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place. My sister is by my side, and we are both going to say good night to you. Come on, Margaret. Good night, children. Good night, and good luck to you all.
This is remarkable. A 14-year-old speaking a message of calm to other children as bombs fall on Great Britain. In 1945, she got her parents' permission to help in the wartime effort by learning to drive and service military vehicles. And on May 9th, 1945, when the war ended, she and Margaret were able to mingle in the crowds in London unrecognized to celebrate victory, calling it one of the most memorable nights of her life. In 1952, when her father George died, she was told she was now the Queen. In a 1992 BBC documentary about the Queen, she stated, quote, "In a way, I didn't have an apprenticeship. My father died much too young, and so it was all a very sudden kind of taking on and making the best job you can," unquote. In this respect, she took her role in stride because she was made for a time such as this. She accepted her destiny, which was not even supposed to happen. But history had other plans. In the constitutional monarchy of Britain, the Queen is the head of state, but she can only do what the government orders for official actions. However, she still remains a tremendous influence. She is also the official head of the Church of England and can influence the appointment of bishops, for instance. In what the Queen called the annus horribilis of 1992, her daughter, Princess Anne, was divorced. Prince Charles and Princess Diana separated, and so did her son Prince Andrew and his wife Sarah. That was also the year that Windsor Castle, a residence that she far preferred to Buckingham Palace, was seriously damaged by fire. The Queen seemed a bit detached when the nation mourned the death of Princess Diana, but eventually she made a public address. And although incredibly wealthy, Elizabeth was known to be somewhat frugal and economical. She had a flair for humor, as well as seemed unfazed by intruders and detractors. On her Golden Jubilee in 2002, she reminisced, saying, quote, "It has been a pretty remarkable 50 years by any standards. There have been ups and downs, but anyone who can remember what things were like after those 6 long years of war appreciates what immense changes have been achieved since then," unquote. Anyone who has seen that much history has keen eyes. And today's generations do not understand the hardships that they faced: rations and shelters and bombs. Even when tabloids and TV series tried to overly dramatize her life, she remained solid and unfazed. She was the soft power. She sat alone at her husband Philip's funeral in 2021 due to COVID restrictions. To go from a wartime princess to sitting alone due to an invisible airborne threat, that's a true matriarch. She has also been preparing for her eventual passing, delegating duties to her son Charles and Prince William as well, who attends various ribbon-cutting ceremonies. In April 2020, at the height of COVID fears, she made a national address with these words.
I'm speaking to you at what I know is an increasingly challenging time. A time of disruption in the life of our country. A disruption that has brought grief to some, financial difficulties to many, and enormous changes to the daily lives of us all. I want to thank everyone on the NHS frontline, as well as care workers and those carrying out essential roles, who selflessly continue their day-to-day duties outside the home in support of us all. I'm sure the nation will join me in assuring you that what you do is appreciated, and every hour of your hard work brings us closer to a return to more normal times. It reminds me of the very first broadcast I made in 1940, helped by my sister. We, as children, spoke from here at Windsor to children who had been evacuated from their homes and sent away for their own safety. Today, once again, many will feel a painful sense of separation from their loved ones. But now, as then, we know deep down that it is the right thing to do. While we have faced challenges before, this one is different. This time we join with all nations across the globe in a common endeavor, using the great advances of science and our instinctive compassion to heal. We will succeed, and that success will belong to every one of us. We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again. But for now, I send my thanks and warmest good wishes to you all.
She went from fighting a war with Germany to a war with a virus, and still she remained a calming, soothing presence at a very turbulent, anxious time. Her words are measured, and her demeanor the eye of the hurricane. She also remained a force of optimism, forecasting that we will meet again. And I think that perhaps she was even seeing into her own future, recognizing that her days on this earth and as queen were numbered. Meeting again can have a more profound significance, as people will use this phrase when referring to the afterlife. And while it wasn't a nasty virus that took her life, she was able to endure wars, violence, plagues, social unrest, and a constantly shifting world. We can't slow down the pace of the world. We can only manage it. And I don't know if there was ever a better manager of the world than Queen Elizabeth II, who never let the slings and arrows of the world deter her. In fact, she did it with flair, style, and wit. And while more modern voices want to lampoon the monarchy as outdated and stigmatic, rarely do they take her reign comprehensively. As Teddy Roosevelt famously said, it's not the critic who counts, because they don't get in the arena. This woman went from calm, collected princess to servicing heavy vehicles to celebrating in the streets of London to enduring COVID. Most people today are worried about what they're going to repost on social media. Thankfully, she has lived through the age of social media without being a servant to it. When a male monarch passes away and his successor is a female monarch, the national anthem lyrics change slightly. Not since 1952 have they changed, but they will now, as Charles III ascends. So I'd like to close the show with the new God Save the King. And let us remember the Queen's words. We will meet again.
God save our gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King, send him victory.